So I've got a couple of interesting bikes that's on test at the moment, which got me thinking of a test that I can do. It's not really scientific because I can't keep enough variables consistent, but hopefully it'll still be interesting both for me and for other people. So I've got an e-gravel bike and a more traditional gravel bike. I'm going to do the same route on subsequent days and see how they compare both in time, and also I'm going to use some power meter pedals and see how the power that I have to put out varies as well. So first bike, this is a Ritchey Outback, and this comes in at a weight of 10.68 kilos, and that is a weight that's ready to ride. The only thing that it doesn't have on it is bottles. This particular bike is spec'd with a Ritchey kit. It has got a 1x drivetrain with Shimano GRX and predominantly Ritchey components. I've been riding this for a little while. I've been doing some bike packing on it. Overall it's a really nice bike, really enjoyed riding it. So I'm not going to use this as a review for this bike, but it's a bike that I've really enjoyed riding. And the e-gravel bike, this is a Kinesis Range. So this is a new style of gravel bike that's been released. This one in a ready to ride format, again just without the bottle cages, is 16.76 kilos. So we're talking a difference of 6 kilos for roughly the same kind of bike, same kind of spec. This bike uses a Fazua motor. It's a relatively new system. The motor system is all within that, and then the battery is on the down tube here. It's quite a neat system compared to a more traditional e-bike, something with a Bosch or Shimano Steps motor. The ride is actually a lot more natural. So as you can see, I've got Garmin Vector pedals on here. These are the 3S models, so single-sided. The reason, normally I wouldn't put road pedals on a gravel bike, but for the routes I'm going to do, I'm going to purposely keep it so that there's not going to be much walking. So I'm going to avoid gates and avoid hiker bikes, and just so I can get some sort of metric from both rides to compare. So first one out is going to be the Ritchey, and then we'll be riding the Kinesis tomorrow. So in terms of the route, purposely picked a fairly hilly route because I think that's going to show the differences more. And as you can tell, the first hill, quite a steep one, about a breath, coming up from the village I live. It's a long climb, but the first bit is the steepest. In total we've got about 10 k's on the road, and we're going to start mixing in some off-road stuff. So I'm now in a forest called Halfway, at what is the bottom of quite a long uphill stretch. What's interesting is that I'm already getting range anxiety for the e-bike. I'm not riding it till tomorrow. So the Kinesis, they claim can do 1,000 meters of elevation, or that's what they base the range on, not distance, which is interesting and it's different. And now I've already done 705 meters in 33k. So I'm thinking, right, how am I going to do this route to make sure that I can get round with a full battery, or without running out the battery tomorrow. So that's going to be interesting. Also, this climb is where I think that bike can make up the most difference tomorrow. So I'm riding up this 14-15k an hour. If I'm doing anywhere above 20 k's an hour tomorrow, I'll be making up huge time. Another point on this Ritchey, to the highest point of the climb, the normalised power, for people who understand a bit about power, normalised power I'd done to that point was 210, and now even after a long downhill it's still 200, so it's going to be interesting tomorrow to see how that compares as well. That climb actually wasn't as bad as I feared. For some reason I remember it being a lot worse, but here's a crucial thing. I'm about to tick over to 1,000. Still only done 40 k's and I'm at the furthest, well, I haven't even got to the furthest point. So I've got a long way to get back. And I think the route as well, about trying not to put too much climbing in. But now I'm on top of Epping, in MOD land and come up with some troops and stuff, so it's probably best to put the camera away and enjoy the ride. So I just finished the first day riding on the Ritchie. So stats I've got, so the distance that I've ridden 68.2 k's, time taken 2 hours 40 minutes, average speed 25.6 kilometers an hour. So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes on an e-bike. In terms of power, normalized power 196 watts, average power 173, and so kilojoules, so essentially what I've burnt on the ride, 1,551 kilojoules. So yeah, I'm gonna go out now on the e-bike tomorrow and we'll see how they compare. It's second day, just about to head out on the Kinesis range and do the identical route. Not sure if it's important or not, but just to give an idea of my personal stance on e-bikes is I'm definitely not an e-bike hater in any way, shape or form. In fact, we've got one ourselves, use them for events, and generally I think e-bikes are brilliant. They get more people out on bikes, get more people out riding. The weather today is very similar to yesterday, still got a wind from the same direction, it's still overcast, so although again it's not exactly the same, it's at least similar conditions, so we're going to have a fair-ish test, or as fair as it can be anyway. So I'm riding on the Kinesis. For this Fazua motor, it's got 3 levels of support, and I'll be using it exclusively on the lowest, which is the green mode, and that gives up to 125 watts of support, but that wattage is coming from the motor, so you're not getting 125 into the pedals. It's because of the efficiencies. So I just reached the top, the point where yesterday I'd averaged or done 210 normalized watts normalized power. Today it's actually higher, 218. Not sure how the time, I can't remember the time to this point. I think it's quite interesting that I'm pushing harder without trying to on this bike. So now on the really long fire road climb that leads up onto Epin Mountain, and this is where I think this bike might or should be a bit faster, but we'll see. So far, I've actually been really impressed with this. There was a long section of a gradual downhill on the road, and above that limit, the EU enforced limit 25 k's, this disconnects and in theory has no efficiency loss or limited, and that seems really true. It just felt like a normal bike coming down there, doing 35-40 k's an hour, no problem, felt good. And what I'm also really pleased about, of 5 lights, only one's gone out so far, so I'm 33 k's in, done 660 meters of climbing, and only 1 out of 5 has gone out. So in terms of the range and battery, it's really good. It'd be interesting to see what it's down to at the top of this climb. So I've now exceeded the claimed range of the bike. It's almost done 1,100 meters of climbing. Done 50 k's, I've got another under 20 k's to go. Good luck. Still got 3 batteries left. So really impressed with the range, no pun intended. I've got no worries at all about getting back. I think it's not going to run out before I get home. Just finished the ride on the Kinesis range, and stats for today now. So the time taken is 2 hours 39 minutes and 12 seconds, which is, it's almost identical, which is I'm really surprised about. Average speed 25.8 kilometers per hour. Looking at the power, So normalized power 199 watts, average 172, and kilojoules used, so energy used, 1526. So I'm amazed really how similar these are. But what I'm going to do is sort of dive into more specifics of it and look at where different bikes are a bit faster or slower and where there might have been some differences. And just one other thing before I do that, just to show you, I've got 2 dots left on that bar. So 2 dots left, and if that's going on percentage terms, then you've got sort of 40% of a battery life left. Considering that I've done 1400 meters of climbing, this is impressive for the Kinesis and for this motor. Okay, so just comparing both bikes as an overview. So elapsed time and moving time were very slightly different on the Kinesis. I did have to stop a couple of times, which means that the average speed was just very slightly higher, 0.2 kilometers per hour faster. Normalized power, almost the same, only 3 watts difference. Average power, again, almost the same. And probably the biggest difference here, you can see average heart rate was 10 or 12 beats per minute higher on the Ritchey, so the non-e-bike. I don't know why that is when the power is effectively the same. To have a big difference in the heart rate, that's one I'm not sure about. And maximum heart rate almost exactly the same, and cadence is identical. So it's interesting that the stats are, or the power stats are almost the same, but the heart rate is different. Okay, just using Strava is quite useful feature here where you can compare efforts. So the baseline is the e-bike, and the purple line is the Ritchey Outback. So from the start, you can see the Ritchey is very slightly faster on what was effectively a quite flat tarmac stretch. As soon as the climb starts, went behind, flattens off again, you can see the Ritchey comes back, and that kind of happens pretty much all the way up to the top of the climb. This big line here actually dropped the saddlebag, so I had to go back and get it, which was looked like a minute and a half, which was on the that was using the Kinesis. From that, the Ritchey was a little bit slower going around the back of the dam, which is a lot of single track, a double track. And then Kinesis was quite a bit faster going up one of the steep hills. But then downhill and back here, see, he was quite a bit slower. I'm not sure why that was. Going up the long Fire climb, again, time lost. From the very high point down, you see that the Ritchey's gained quite a chunk of time there. I'm not sure why that was. The wind might have been a factor. And then coming back, Ritchey just loses time quite a bit then on this last final climb, and then gains it on the tarmac back towards town. So with the test now done and a bit of time to sort of think about it afterwards, I mean, initially I thought it wasn't that great that I could only just manage to beat this over a normal bike. But then I guess you got to think, I'm not really the target audience for this bike, and if I would imagine if there's someone putting out less power, this would have a much bigger difference over a standard bike. Also, I had a lot of battery left. You could probably use this in mid-setting, and then you'd have a bigger difference, especially on the climbs. Then also, there was a noticeable difference going up the hills. I was, minutes quicker up some of the bigger hills. I think another big thing here could be maybe the ability to add more weight to it and be able for the battery and the motor to be able to handle that. So I think that could be a big element. That's something we're gonna test out as well to see if this maybe could make a good bike packing option. I know Kinesis are developing an external holder so you can have a second battery. I think it's going to fit in here, so you'd carry an extra battery. and that then you'd be able to do hundreds, or well, at least over 100 kilometers range with this, and do some really big trips. Also, what I think it could be really interesting is if you could drop some of the weight off this as a standard bike, you could probably get it close to 10 kilos, and then you're not far off the weight of a standard bike. You could also then maybe think about having one bike to do everything. Maybe this could be a commuting bike where you keep the battery in, and then weekends you go out and, you know, if you're riding with some other people, maybe you want to take the battery out and just go out for a ride. Because I think without this does add quite a bit of weight. If you've dropped the overall weight of the bike down to maybe close to 10 kilos, you're going to have a package which is much lighter, much more like a standard bike. Then when you add the battery in, you'll have a bike that should potentially be able to go even faster because it's less weight for it to carry. So that's where I think this type of bike and this Fazua motor with a gravel type bike could be really good. Also, as a road bike, you've got good options here, because on the flats it's barely noticeable that you've got the extra weight. It's only when you're climbing that you notice it, and that's when the motor kicks in. So there's some really big advantages to this. It's obviously not aimed at me, but this bike in general, I think e-bikes in general I'm a big fan of, and I think this could be a really good option for people who are looking at specifically for an e-bike, and maybe an e-bike that can do stuff or general riding that you don't need a motor for. So and it is it's an enjoyable bike to ride, and it's one that I think overall I'd recommend.